Alright folks, welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. This video is going to be the start to a case study here, looking at this copy of the Giant Size X-Men #1, a very popular comic, one of the most popular comics from the 1970s. This one is coming to us pre-CGC graded at a 6.5 with, I will note, cream to off-white pages. For a book from 1975, I would say off-white white is probably the median page quality. Anything with white pages obviously is going to be above the curve. Anything with off-white will be slightly below the curve. Once you start getting into cream pages, though, on a book from 1975, it means this was probably sitting in somebody's attic for a good period of time. So we're going to just keep that in mind, and because we have that page quality, what I wanted to do is show off right here on the back cover, we're going to have a dust shadow. So you can see starting right about here and floating all the way through right there, you can see that the top band of the book is going to be darker. That means something was sitting here while this was exposed in the attic, and that little bit got a little bit more exposure than the stuff that was protected underneath. You can kind of see that on the front too. There is a small stain here. So, real quick, the CGC grader notes are going to say two things. There's only two notes. One of them is light creasing on the back cover, which we can see right here. There's a little bit of a tear and a thumb bend there from somebody pushing this into a bag and a board. There's some more right there. And then there's a little bit of a crease right there on the corner. The other one is a bend full left of book. And you can kind of see that here. It has some pretty bad distortion by Nightcrawler right there. And as you follow that on up, now some of that's just from the crumbing construction of this book. You know, these are probably some of the most irritating books to press because those staples are there, and you can see that the staples even protruding through the cover. That's normal. CGC is not going to ding you for that. You can see it on the back here too. So that staple's kind of protruding through on both of those. Obviously, you don't want to make it worse, but a lot of the books have that staple protrusion because they used big fat metal staples on a stack of paper. Which is pretty stupid, just generally how they were put together. And you can see that bend through the back here as well. So if you look right in this area, you can see it. And if you just look kind of all the way down. So I think this thing was not previously cleaned and pressed. You can see some dirt up here. There's some more dirt over here. A little bit more right there. And, it's not filthy or anything like that, but I think a little bit of a dry clean will help this one on a lot. So when considering if this thing's going to get a bump or not, what we want to do is just see if we can find other defects not noted by CGC. You'll notice that this edge does have some damage on it, and that's because the cover is going to stick out a little bit more than the inner pages. And all the way along here, you're going to be able to see it folded under. So we'll be able to press that flat. And you can see that right there. It looks worse up top here. And then there's a little bit of a stain right here that was not noted on the CGC grader notes. And there's a little bit of a corner defect here. And of course, that dust shadow I already called out was not on the grader notes. So all of those are defects we're going to want to be able to pay attention to. I don't think any of them are precluding this thing from getting a bump. It's not going to go sky high with the corner creases on the back, but I think a good amount of blue LED overlay treatment on this can clear things like that, hopefully that dust shadow and the stain. Dust shadows like this, I would say I'm probably 70-30 on. Usually I can make them look better, but if that damage is really, really toasted, there's not a whole lot that you can do to bring it all the way back to life. Anyway, this one I think is going to be a good candidate for a bumpski. So we're going to go ahead and open it on up. Get my screwdriver on in there, kind of my normal fashion. Pop the corner posts, like so. And then if you get your finger in there, I just like going right down the seam. So go over to this side here. Oop. Actually just split all the way, so we might as well just pop it all the way off. Yep. There it goes. No, still being stubborn there. Whatever. That's enough to get it out. Just slide that on out. Get our tag out. So you're having an atypically hard time getting the tag off of here. There we go. Cool. Throw that away. There. half the battle. All right, this one looked like it had a sufficient lip across the top here. It's a little bit tighter than I might like, but I think that's going to be the place to go through. So I got my nice box cutter, brand new razor blade. I'm going to do the delicate work right here. This is hands down the nerve-wracking part, having your razor blade within, you know, millimeters of that comic book. Did not make it through the bottom of that all the way. It's okay, we're just gonna and you can always come do a second pass, so if you're going to error on the side away from the comic book. That's what we're doing right there. Yeah, see, I didn't quite get it all. We'll go through one more time. There we go. Just make sure that that's opened up all the way. It is. There's a little piece of plastic in there I can see, so I'm just going to tap that out real quick before I get to the book. All right, now we're going to put my slices in here with the scissors. And since this one's square bound, I'm going to try to be a little bit more generous with that. I'll cut that piece off because if you look, you can see that was hanging over and I didn't want to scratch the book on that when I pull out. So we're going to take that on off. Flip it on over. Try not to grab a book right by the edge or push on it, so I always try to manipulate books a little bit more in there. And you can see that, you know, there is legit creaming on that page. Now down here it looks quite bright, and you can see it's that dust shadow up top that looks the darkest, so that's what they're referring to. You can see the micro chamber paper in there. That's CGC's attempt at helping catch some of the off-gassing from the paper while it sits in a slab. Yeah, so I would call these legitimately off-white to cream. I think that that's a fair assessment. You can see it's worse up top than it is down below. Let's see if we can take a look at that stain on the interior cover. Be really careful here to open it on all the way up. Yeah, so it is going to be a real stain up there, you can see. So, all right, I'm going to get some pictures of this book on the table, and then we'll come on back and do our dry cleaning. All right, here we are for our dry clean on this copy of Giant Size 1. Now, this is by no means the dirtiest book I've ever looked at. By the way, this thing hopefully will press up quite nice. If you look here, I took before and after pictures, so those will get posted to Facebook and Instagram. But you can see there's a lot of distortion. I think it's fair for CGC to call this one, you know, lower grade with that much waving and bending. It stands up, you know, a good inch off the table on this corner here, so, or 3/4 of an inch. Yeah, 3/4 of an inch. It's clearly raised up, so we'll see. Now, on this open edge, I've said this before, but because this is already folded over, we don't want to damage that, so I'm going to slide a backer board under here for the dry cleaning part. That way we're not stressing that paper out any more than we have to. So now it has a nice firm support to be erased under, and I'm just going to gently go through these white areas here with my eraser pen and just try to clean them up a little bit. This one's already pretty clean, so we don't have to do anything Herculean. I think the two biggest defects are really that full cover bend or full book bend, and then actually I think that dust shadow is a bigger deal to its grade than the creasing. But kind of surprised they didn't mark that dust shadow or the tear or the stain. So there you go, quality of CGC grader notes right there. Now CBCS, on the other hand, I find actually has very detailed grader notes. Sometimes too detailed, where they describe something and you're like, oh goodness, I don't want that book. How did that book ever get that grade? And then you look at the book and you're like, oh, that stain is literally, you know, a pen dot. Like, I can live with that. I want to make sure I don't fold under a piece of blue here. Yes, if you look, this little piece of blue is folded under there. So before I put any pressure around that area, I want to unfold it so I don't crease it down more than it is. And just gently flatten it out. This is not a filthy book, but I definitely am picking up dirt while I'm doing this, so. There we go. All right, that's most of this edge. Take that on out of there just to make sure I don't have snag it on anything. And as always, wipe your area as frequently as possible, because you just make a mountain of these eraser bits. Well, that's part of the deal. All right, around this red and pink here on the giant size, I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible, but I'm also going to try to get just a really quick light clean between those letters. Obviously you don't want to linger over them because you will cause color rub. So this thing's pretty fouled, so I'm just going to clean it off. Again, I have painter's tape off camera. I just rub it on to try to clean it up as much as possible. Don't have to get it 100%, but you want to get a nice clean surface area to work with. If for no other reason than it does help convince you that you're actually pulling crud off. So there we go, crud. And to try to make this spine look a little bit less severe than it is, I'm just going to try to gently rub that and see if I can get some of the surface dirt that might be in that seam to come off. There's a little bit of something right there. Storm's cape, but I think that'll get it. And then it's a little micro tear down here. So just try to keep my eye ahead of the eraser a little bit. Make sure I don't get any surprises on those micro tears. So there we go. That's the front cover. Now, the back cover with this tanning, we're going to have to be very slow and very careful up here. Tanned paper equals brittle paper, and you want to use your slowest, most gentle technique on anything that looks tanned. Now, it's amazing. You can clean quite aggressively even a Golden Age book if it has bright color and doesn't have that tanning, but if it's tanned, it's going to be delicate and brittle. And I've literally knocked pieces out of comic books going very slow just by hitting them, and you hit a little crease that was there and you see a piece pop off. It's very tragic. Obviously it's not something I do on purpose. I try to take my slowest time here on these tear here. So again, we're going to go parallel to the tear, not across it. And I'm going to get a little piece of magic eraser for this darker seam that's right here. The magic eraser is nice because you can clean with a lot less pressure. Just going to try to rub that seam a little bit. Of course, the magic eraser also has the risk of going through gloss, and so we have to be very restrained in its use. see, you know, we are getting crud off. Eraser's getting fouled up, so is having an impact. Just a very slow one. There's a little bit of a stain up here on the top corner too, if you can see that. Right up on that top edge, right there. Especially on this tanned corner here, I'm going to use my magic eraser trick where I just swipe that off. And I'm going to get out my backer board here. And it's hard for you to see, but there's a very fine line of dirt right down this whole back cover, and so I'm going to hit that here with the magic eraser, just giving it 2 quick swipes. Could do that with the normal eraser, but it was fine and fairly dark, and so as long as I had that in my hand. Okay, we're now exiting what you might call the danger zone. Obviously still want to be careful, but much less concerning now that we're on the whiter, brighter parts of it. That's 2 edges done. A lot of gunk down here. I'm getting the corner of the comic right down that spine just to try to help make it look nicer. And then right in this address box there's some dirt, so I'm going to try to go vertical as much as possible there between the lines. We'll give the whole area one really light rub over. Now over the staple here, this is like no pressure because you will rub it through the staple. Yeah, the paper over the staple, I should say. You do not want to be at fault for that. You can hear the book cracking because it's that warped. Right along the edge here, there is a good amount of dirt. It's clearly sitting up against something that got dirty. So take a good amount of that off. Get a little more right in there. I'm going to avoid the very top corner here as much as possible due to that tanning. All right, so I think that's a dry clean. Now this one I'm a little split on how I'm going to work it up. So I think what I'm going to start with here is 2 blue LED overlays using 3% hydrogen peroxide, and I'm going to see how the book responds to that. And I might have to come back then and do either more treatments or more bled M, so the misting method. Now I typically try to avoid the misting method, but the misting method is pretty good at these dilute tide lines. And it also gives a much more intense whitening, which might be beneficial to the exterior cover. Now the actual amount of staining here was deemed so minor by CGC they didn't even note it last time. So in principle I could go through and spot hop that, and I could spot hop up here. I don't think that that's worth doing on this book as it sits now. I'll have to make a judgment call, you know, after we come back from the light treatment to see what I think about that. But at least at the moment here, I'm feeling pretty good at a decent chance for a bump ski, and if we hold that there, you can see how it's kind of warped up. Now the stack on this does have some crookedness to it to begin with, and you can see the bottom there. The bottommost wrap is curled over on the edge, and so we're not going to ever be able to get this thing to be perfectly flat because it is constructed kind of on a goofy angle, but we can make it a lot better, I think. So we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck and stay tuned. All right, folks, time for a halfway check-in here. So this comic now has had a total of 3 blue LED treatments on the front cover and a couple on the back cover. And what you'll notice is right here we have what looks like intense staining that has formed as a result of the process. So what that means is that the overlay I had on there was too wet, and as the overlay dried and separated, it stayed connected to the parts that are whiter here, and all the goop from there ran and made a new line, and then the part here got a little bit less whitening. Now you can fix that with continuous blue LED overlays, but it does take a long time, and at least on a book of this era, what I'm going to do is transition from the overlay to the misting method, where you mist the whole cover and then irradiate it, and that seems to do a much better job. And I'm going to have to do that on both covers, because while this looks a whole lot better over here, you can see I have a couple of really light ones that have formed in other spots on the cover. So both the front cover and the back cover here are going to have to get at least 1, but probably 2 blue LED misting treatments to knock that down. Hopefully I won't have to do any on the interior. On a square bound book like this, getting that interior is a little bit more challenging, and I'm always nervous about the misting method on it. It can be done, and I posted the kind of setup I use for it, but it's one that I would hesitate to try to execute. So yeah, and I just have the sheet of paper under there to try to protect the inner wraps, and ideally, you know, if you have too much moisture coming on through, it'll soak into that page and not the pages underneath, and you definitely don't want to pick up any of the crud that's on these pages. So yeah, a little bit of a bummer, a little bit of a course correct, but this does happen, and it is quite fixable just by changing tactics halfway through. All right, so this one's got a couple of issues. You can see here that bled mist did make it better. The lines are lighter here across the back, but you can still see that there's a good amount of what we call tiger striping. So that term's from James at Key Issue Collectibles, so I'll refer you to him. He's one of the people that helped develop the Captain Mike method. What I think this is just a little too much true tanning, and the best way to pop that off is actually going to be to extract it onto paper, and so we're going to do a little bit of spot hop here. Of course, the spot hop is going to be quite delicate, and we're going to have to be quite careful, especially on this book. So I have my tacking iron here set. Now I have it set real low. So if you look at that, that's at like 1.25 on the dial. So I'm going to try to keep that under 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And then here I have my spot hop mix. And this is 50-50 hydrogen peroxide from the store, which I clearly dripped out of that bottle. So let me get rid of that. Go sheet of paper. So it's 50-50 store-bought hydrogen peroxide and distilled water, and that's what I use for the spot hop. And we're just going to gently roll this Q-tip dabbed in here, and my little pump. This little pump's just from like a makeup remover or something. It's like a cosmetic product. It's another one of the goodies I stole from my wife. All right, and just gonna slowly, again, paint some lines. And when you're doing this, I'm just going to paint the line, and then we're just going to dab it off real slow, real cool on the iron. And we're just going to try to transfer as much of that crud as we can to the little overlays here that we've got. And because these lines are separate, you know, I can paint a few of them at the same time. And you want to kind of let it get a good soak in. You can see it's starting to transfer to the overlay underneath there. If you use too much humidity or if you use too high of a pressure, you'll end up with micro creases in all those spots, and that's bad. Also, if you have too high of a temperature, you have a really good risk of ink lift doing this. This is one of my least favorite techniques to do, but it ends up being highly effective. And if you've watched my other videos on this, you know, we don't have to get 100% of it out. What we're going to try to do is just get, you know, a majority. And then we'll go back to the bled misting. So the spot hop here is intended to get the stuff that's kind of rolling around and roaming around when you touch it with a little bit of moisture. This is a bigger pocket here than I want, so I'm going to dry that one right away. You know, I try to keep things like an inch or less. If you go too big, there's just too much contraction when you dry it, and that's where you get your micro creasing from. I'll start back over here. This is going to take me a while, so I'm probably going to turn off the camera after a little bit just so you don't have to see me do the whole thing. This is probably going to be a 20+ minute segment here on this book. Clearly did not quite go how I was hoping. But the good news is it's moving around, and if it's moving around, then we have the ability to get it off. So there is a silver lining. I'm going to dry this off of here just because anything that where you see humidity, I splattered a little bit showing you my spot hop kit. So we don't want that humidity transferring to the comic book in the wrong spot. So. And very little pressure. Mostly just gliding it over there, trying to dry and pull off as much. And I keep sliding the thing underneath because you can see the little bits of moisture that is transferring. I do indeed have a little bit of a micro crease right by that one that formed. It's only one and it's very small. You can tell when you re-wet it, you instantly get a line where it had formed. And so this is the process. I'm going to keep at it for probably, like I said, another 20 minutes, just gently wetting and dabbing up here to try to make it look better. So stay tuned for what that looks like. All right, here we are with this copy of Giant Size X-Men #1. So this is our pre-press look. You can see it clearly looks wrinkled there. If you look at it from the top down, you can see that the cover's bowed out, and that's an indication that I treated the interior covers. Now this thing, when we last left off, had a good amount of staining on the interior. I've tried to lighten that up, I think, as best as I can get it. And the same is true here on the back cover. So it looks a lot better, you know, all in all. And we're just going to press this one on up and hope it turns out quite nice. The good news is this one started out, you know, mid-grade, and so I think it had a lot of room for upward improvement, and I'm still feeling really good about this one. So we'll see what it looks like after the press. All right, folks, time for the big reveal. CGC has deemed this comic book an 8.0 copy. Universal grade. I think that all in all, this is a really good outcome. So I was actually really nervous about this one when I was getting messaged about it. You know, this one had some problems there, especially on the back cover, and we had to go in and fix those with some misting and some spot hopping, and it was a lot of extra work due to a little, just a slight mistake with that overlay. That is something that you just have to be incredibly careful with, especially anytime you have true tanning on a book. This one did turn out quite nicely though, so going from a 6.5 to a 7 to a 7.5 to an 8, that is a 3 grade level bump, and so I'm going to call that a successful bumpski. The other thing that I'll point out about this one is CGC really gave the page quality quite a jump. So it went from cream to off-white pages to off-white to white pages. And I want to point out with that we did not actually whiten the interior pages in any way. And so, you know, I think a lot of people want to put a lot of stock into those page quality ratings from CGC, and in my experience, they're one of the least scientific or least precise. Actually, sometimes they're completely random, in my opinion, and I think that that's really unfortunate. If somebody wants to share that with CGC, I personally think they really should put more attention into being a lot more precise about those page quality ratings, particularly on older books. Sometimes they go up, sometimes I've seen them go down. Both of those can happen. In this case, I think what it was is all that really heavy color that was on the back cover of this book that we whitened and brightened on up really had a dramatic impact overall, and just how it presented and the perception of that page quality. All right, so this one's got a big bumpski. We'll post pictures on Facebook and Instagram. Please go ahead and leave a thumbs up on the video. Click that subscribe button down below, and feel free to leave a comment here or on other social media. Take care, everybody.